great honor to address you on an issue that affects every nation across the globe, the world drug problem, and a big problem it is. The scourge of drug addiction continues to claim too many lives in the United States and in nations around the world. Today, we commit to fighting the drug epidemic together.
4:37 a.m., Los Angeles, California. A fortified mansion. A pastor under surveillance. Hidden trafficking routes. The most shocking faith-based trafficking breach in California's history. Hit like to help the truth reach more people.
As you know, millions of people pour into our country from the border. And not anymore, they don't know, nobody comes in actually anymore. But under the Biden administration, 25 million people came in, and they came from prisons and mental institutions, and they were drug dealers, and all sorts of people came in that shouldn't be.
23 children found, locked inside a $2 million mansion, hidden behind sermons and scripture. This wasn't a cartel hideout. This was a pastor's home, turned into a holding site. This wasn't an outside threat. This was betrayal wrapped in faith. If you want to see how deep this network goes, we go deeper. 4:37 a.m. Los Angeles was still dark when floodlights illuminated a $2 million mansion atop a hillside. On paper, the property belonged to Pastor Abdi Hirsi, a Somali American born in the United States. From a distance, it looked like a place of worship and tranquility, but up close, it resembled a fortress. Nearly 30 armed mercenaries patrolled the grounds 24/7. Surveillance cameras covered every entrance. Motion sensors were positioned throughout the perimeter. This wasn't a pastor's residence. This was a defensive complex. When the order came, FBI and Department of Homeland Security moved simultaneously. The breach was sudden and violent. Steel gates collapsed. Flashbangs ripped through the silence. Armed guards returned fire from behind a stone cover. Agents advanced in disciplined lines, shields forward, voices cutting through smoke and echoes. The exchange lasted only minutes before the defenders were overwhelmed. Pastor Abdi Hirsi was seized inside the main house, caught attempting to erase encrypted data. Nearby, agents uncovered nearly 50 heavy weapons and shipping records tied to violent trafficking networks. Then they opened a locked structure at the edge of the garden. Inside were 23 children, none older than 10. At that moment, the raid became a rescue. Comment SAVE if you believe no child should be hidden behind walls of power. Over the previous 18 months, more than 40 children from small Christian congregations across Los Angeles County had vanished without a trace. No ransom calls, no forced entries, no bodies. Parents described the same moment of confusion. One day their child went to church activities, the next day they simply did not come home. Every case seemed isolated. Different neighborhoods, different families, different circumstances. Until investigators overlaid the data, nearly every missing child had passed through the same church, attended sermons led by the same man, Pastor Abdi Hirsi. To families, he was soft-spoken, persuasive, respected. He spoke about discipline, faith, and protection. He offered help to struggling parents, temporary care, religious mentoring, safe spaces for children while families worked long hours. There was no violence, no threats, just trust. That trust became the weapon. Parents were told their children would stay overnight for prayer programs or religious instruction. Some were promised education. Others were told their children were being prepared for missionary work. No paperwork raised alarms. No official complaints were filed because no one suspected a crime. Investigators found that at least 41 children entered Hirsi's custody through church-related activities. 23 were recovered alive at the mansion. The rest had been quietly removed from the system. No school records, no medical visits, no digital footprints. To the outside world, these children had simply disappeared. What families believed was a place of safety had become a controlled intake point, a system designed to move children without force, without witnesses, and without resistance. By the end of the review, agents reached a single conclusion. The mansion was the holding site, but the church was where it all began. If this shocked you, it should. Comment, protect children. If you believe faith should never be used as a weapon, the operation did not unfold as a wave. It unfolded like fractures. Instead of a single push, command authorized controlled ignition points, small violent ruptures across California designed to pull the network inward before it could run. Each team moved under separate clocks, unaware of when the others would strike. Silence was the weapon. At 5:19 a.m., the first rupture hit a logistics depot near the port of Los Angeles. The building posed as a bonded warehouse. Inside, guards attempted to torch servers as agents cut power. Gunfire erupted in the dark. Muzzle flashes stuttered through smoke. Agents advanced by sound, shields tight, boots slipping on spilled fuel. 2 guards were downed, 3 surrendered. The fire never caught. 4 minutes later, San Bernardino, a convoy rolled on an unmarked compound that had no business existing where it stood. No signage, no permits. Armed men poured out from side doors trying to escape into adjacent desert lots. A helicopter dropped in low, rotors kicking dust into blinding clouds. Agents moved through the chaos, tackling suspects mid-run, pinning weapons before they could clear safeties. Then Fresno detonated. What looked like a cold storage facility fought back like a bunker. Automatic fire punched through thin metal walls. 1 agent was knocked flat by ricochet. Teams adapted instantly. Breach charges through loading docks, flanking through refrigeration corridors. Flashbangs burst. The shooting stopped. Inside a hidden office, investigators found manifests already half-shredded, timestamps still warm. San Diego came last and hardest. A residential block erupted when a door blew inward and armed men returned fire from stairwells and rooftops. Civilians were still asleep. Commands were whispered, not shouted. Precision mattered. Agents advanced inch by inch, suppressing without spraying, forcing surrender rather than escalation. In under 8 minutes, the block was silent. Across the state, 17 locations were hit. Some folded instantly. Others fought until they couldn't. By sunrise, 36 suspects were in custody. Cash was stacked on evidence tables by the million. Weapons were tagged. Phones buzzed with unanswered messages from numbers that would soon go dark. But it was the paperwork that changed everything. Ledgers listed movements, not cargo. Dates, routes, transfers, payment codes. Several entries were marked final. Others carried future timestamps. This was not cleanup. This was interruption. Command centers stared at the maps as pins multiplied. The pattern was unmistakable. California was not a hub. It was a corridor, a testing ground. One segment of a machine designed to move people as quietly as drugs. By the time the last team stood down, one fact was clear. The mansion raid exposed the crime. This night exposed the scale, and whatever was coming next would not be contained by state lines. What you've just seen wasn't chaos. It was coordination under fire. Keep watching. Comment, stand with FBI if you support federal agents risking their lives to stop trafficking networks. The statewide strikes answered one question and opened a far darker one. As evidence from across California was consolidated, analysts noticed something unsettling. The routes, payment structures, and security protocols were not improvised. They were standardized. Every ledger followed the same formatting. Every transfer used the same coded language. Every shipment, whether labeled as electronics, textiles, or charitable supplies, moved according to identical timing windows. This was not a local criminal ring adapting on the fly. This was an imported system. Financial analysts traced wire transfers through layers of shell companies registered in multiple countries. Donations from religious charities merged with logistics payments. Shipping fees were split, laundered, and reassembled before disappearing overseas. When the money trail was finally reconstructed, it pointed to one source repeatedly: the Afghan drug cartels. These networks operate far beyond the image of poppy fields and smugglers. Based primarily in Afghanistan, they control one of the largest heroin and opium production systems on the planet. Federal estimates show that over 80% of the world's illicit opium originates from regions under their influence. But drugs are only part of their portfolio. The same corridors that move narcotics also move people. Investigators confirmed that these cartels function as hybrid organizations, part trafficking syndicate, part paramilitary structure. They rely on rigid discipline, compartmentalization, and absolute silence. Cells do not know the full network. Assets are disposable. Loyalty is enforced through fear and money. Abdi Hirsi fit perfectly into that design. He was not a leader, he was a facilitator. His role was intake and concealment. Using religious authority, he identified vulnerable families, secured temporary custody without resistance, and held children until transfer orders arrived. The mansion was not a destination, it was a buffer. A place where human cargo could be stored until international routes were clear. Shipping documents recovered during the raids confirmed overseas coordination. Containers were flagged for priority clearance. Cargo weights were intentionally mismatched. Some shipments exited U.S. ports under humanitarian exemptions. Others were routed through third countries before vanishing into conflict zones where oversight no longer existed. More disturbing were intelligence links tying these cartel networks to armed extremist groups. While not every operation involved ideology, money from narcotics and trafficking routinely flowed into weapons purchases, training camps, and insurgent financing. Each child moved was not only a crime, it was currency. For Federal Command, the implications were immediate and severe. This was no longer a domestic trafficking case. It was a national security threat embedded inside civilian infrastructure. Churches, charities, ports, supply chains, places designed to be trusted. Analysts briefed leadership with a stark conclusion. Removing Abdi Hirsi would not dismantle the system. At best, it would slow it. The cartel's model was resilient by design, able to replace nodes, reroute money, and resume operations within weeks. That realization shifted the mission. What began as a rescue operation had now crossed into counter-network warfare. The objective was no longer just arrests. It was exposure, disruption, severing the financial and logistical arteries that kept the machine alive. And for the first time, federal agencies acknowledged the truth they could no longer ignore. The children in Los Angeles were not an exception. They were part of a global supply chain. This was no longer a local crime. It was a global pipeline. If you want to understand how deep this network runs, stay with us. The interrogation of Pastor Abdi Hirsi did not begin with shouting. It began with silence. In a secured federal room, hours after the raid, Hirsi sat still, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table. He did not ask for a lawyer immediately. He did not deny the charges. He understood something the agents already knew. Denial would be pointless. When the questions started, they were narrow. Names, dates, locations. At first, Hirsi spoke in fragments. He described his role as administrative. He claimed he only provided temporary shelter. He insisted the children were safe while they were under his roof. But when agents placed photographs on the table, shipping manifests, coded ledgers, surveillance stills from ports and warehouses, his posture changed. The story unraveled. Hirsi admitted he was paid to hold children, not permanently, but until routes cleared. His job was to keep them hidden, quiet, and undocumented. No schools, no hospitals, no online presence. Children who could not be found could not be traced. He described how instructions arrived, never directly. Orders came through intermediaries, encrypted messages, and financial triggers. When funds landed in specific accounts, it meant movement was imminent. When payments stopped, it meant delay. According to his statements, at least 9 children had already been transferred out of California before the raid. He claimed they were moved in stages, first to inland holding points, then toward ports or land crossings using falsified humanitarian paperwork. He said he never asked where they ultimately went, but the records did. Agents from FBI laid out the evidence piece by piece. Shipping schedules matched payment timestamps. Vehicle GPS logs aligned with church event calendars. Donations labeled as charitable support were converted into transport fees within hours. The most disturbing moment came when Hirsi was shown a ledger page marked with red symbols. Those markings, analysts explained, indicated completed transfers. Hirsi did not respond at first. Then he looked away and said quietly, "Those ones aren't coming back." The scope expanded rapidly. Using Hirsi's cooperation, agents mapped a network stretching beyond California. Safe houses in neighboring states, logistics partners near ports, and financial handlers embedded in legitimate businesses. None of them knew the full picture. Each knew only enough to perform their task. That was the design. What shocked investigators most was how ordinary the system looked from the outside. Churches provided access, charities provided cover, shipping companies provided movement. No single transaction appeared criminal. Only when layered together did the crime become visible. By the end of the debriefings, command teams were forced to confront a brutal reality. Even with arrests and seizures, the network was still active. Routes could be rerouted. Funds could be replaced. New facilitators could be recruited. Hirsi had not built the machine. He had simply operated one of its doors. As agents finalized their reports, one conclusion hardened across every briefing room. The children rescued in Los Angeles were survivors of timing. Others had already passed beyond reach, and stopping what remained would require far more than arrests. It would require dismantling the system that made disappearance possible in the first place. Some answers come too late. If you believe systems that erase children must be dismantled, press like to keep this story visible. The arrests did not bring closure. They brought urgency. As reports from interrogations and raids were compiled, federal leadership reached a sober conclusion. Removing Abdi Hirsi and his California network had disrupted the flow, but it had not stopped it. Too many financial channels were still open. Too many routes remained unaccounted for. The machine had been wounded, not dismantled. Within 48 hours, the case was elevated beyond a standard trafficking investigation. Joint task forces expanded under the coordination of the FBI. pulling in international partners, port authorities, financial crime units, and counter-terror analysts. New directives were issued. Trace the money forward, not backward. Follow replacement activity, not just exposed routes. What investigators feared began to appear almost immediately. Shell accounts connected to Hersey went dark, but parallel accounts activated elsewhere. Shipping schedules changed names, not behavior. Charities dissolved on paper, then re-emerged under new registrations. The network was adapting in real time. Analysts identified at least 6 new facilitators stepping into roles vacated by arrests. None had criminal records. Several held respected positions in community organizations. One worked inside a licensed logistics firm. Another operated a religious nonprofit less than 50 miles from the original church. This was not coincidence. It was redundancy by design. Field teams executed follow-up operations quietly. No press, no spectacle. Financial seizures were prioritized over arrests, aiming to starve movement before it could reorganize. Ports increased inspections under emergency authorities. Cargo previously cleared without scrutiny was now flagged, delayed, dismantled. Still, the hardest part remained unresolved. Of the children moved before the Los Angeles raid, some were located months later, alive, hidden in remote regions, terrified to come forward. Others were never found. Intelligence suggested transfers into conflict zones where records did not exist and witnesses did not survive. Families were notified carefully. Some received answers. Others received only probability. For agents involved, the case left a permanent mark. Many had entered law enforcement expecting to confront violence in obvious forms: guns, drugs, gangs. Few were prepared for a system that weaponized trust, faith, and routine paperwork to erase lives without noise. The final briefings did not end with success statements. They ended with warnings. The infrastructure that allowed this network to operate still exists. Churches still gather children. Charities still move money. Supply chains still cross borders faster than laws can follow. What changed was awareness, but awareness alone does not dismantle a system built to survive exposure. As task forces remained active and international leads continued to surface, one truth guided every ongoing operation. This was never just about one pastor, or one mansion, or one state. It was about a method, one that could reappear anywhere trust goes unquestioned and movement goes unexamined. The hunt continued, not as a single operation, but as a standing mission. Because somewhere beyond the last raid map, the network was already trying to rebuild. And this time, federal agencies intended to be waiting. The arrests made headlines. The method survived. What happens next matters. The investigation did more than expose a trafficking network. It forced the nation to confront a truth many preferred to ignore. When faith is misused, and when power goes unchecked, darkness can grow in places never meant to hold it. But the lesson was not about religion itself. It was about the individuals who weaponized it. Pastor Abdi Hersey did not represent Christianity, nor the countless pastors who genuinely protect their communities. He represented something far older and far more dangerous: the exploitation of trust for personal gain. Throughout history, criminal networks have used politics, charities, and even religion as vessels because people instinctively lower their guard around institutions meant to guide and protect them. The Afghan cartel operatives who worked through him did not care about sermons or scripture. They cared about access to families, to children, to documents, to legal shields, to the credibility that churches, nonprofits, and community programs naturally carry. When a system is built on trust, the threat comes not from the system itself, but from those who infiltrate it. Federal analysts reported that Hersey's network operated quietly for years because people hesitated to question a religious figure. They hesitated to question a nonprofit. They hesitated to question a man of guidance. And in the world of organized crime, hesitation is oxygen. Agents emphasize that this case is not a condemnation of faith. It is a reminder that faith without accountability becomes vulnerable. Politics without oversight becomes blind. Communities without vigilance become targets. And the children? They were never victims of religion. They were victims of individuals who hid behind religion, knowing society would hesitate to look too closely. As the federal task force expanded nationwide, churches and organizations began implementing stronger protections: background checks, audits, independent oversight, child safety protocols, and real-time reporting systems. Not because faith is dangerous, but because trust must be protected, not assumed. In their final briefing, federal commanders repeated a message that has echoed across every major operation since. Institutions worth believing in are strong enough to be questioned. This case becomes more than a headline. It becomes a lesson about vigilance, about community responsibility, about refusing to let symbols of hope be twisted into shields for exploitation, and above all, A lesson about listening when something feels wrong, even when the person responsible wears a robe, holds a title, or speaks the language of purity. If you believe protecting children must always outrank protecting reputations, comment, protect the innocent. If you believe faith should never be a hiding place for crime, comment, truth over power. And if you believe stories like this must continue to be exposed, hit like and subscribe.
Un saludo, hermanos y hermanas, desde el Monasterio de la Luz de Nuestra Señora de Fátima. La verdad que contar la verdad, la gran mayoría de las veces, pues trae consecuencias. Es algo que a lo largo de la historia siempre ha sido así, ¿no? Es algo curioso, ¿no? Pero es la pregunta que nos teníamos que hacer en estos últimos tiempos, ¿no? ¿Por qué la verdad siempre pone a la gente tan nerviosa, ¿no? Yo creo que debería ser todo lo contrario, ¿no? Creo que debería ser todo más como tiene que ser, ¿no? Las cosas como son, ¿no? No hay nada que ocultar, ¿no? Si no hay nada que ocultar, ¿por qué te pones nervioso, no? Creo que sería eso lo más lógico, ¿no? Siempre se ha dicho, ¿no? Que si no tienes nada que temer, ¿por qué tienes que asustarte, no? Yo creo que todos los que vamos con la verdad por delante, ¿no? Sabemos, ¿no? Que todo lo que hablamos, todo lo que comentamos, ¿no? Pues la verdad, es tan sencillo como eso. La verdad es que es así. No tiene otra cosa que la gente que la escucha dice, es que es así, es que la verdad es así. Sin embargo, cuando uno está contando mentiras, como es todos estos acólitos, todo esto, los últimos tiempos hay mucho mono, ¿no? Panzudo, ¿no? Que intenta, ¿no? Pues desvirtuar, ¿no? Lo que es la verdad, ¿no? Pero al final caen por su propio peso, ¿no? Porque es todo tan mal, ¿no? De que no entra por ninguna manera, ¿no? A mí me acuerdo yo en una ocasión que me dieron a leer un libro, ¿no? Sobre era de ellos, ¿no? Intentando, pues, decir cosas que la verdad, pues, es que no cuelan, ¿no? No sé, la verdad es que cuando tú mientes sobre algo es muy evidente, ¿no? O sea, a mí al menos siempre me lo ha parecido, ¿no? Es algo que te das cuenta, ¿no? Que es toda una mentira lo que están contando, ¿no? Que se están riendo en tu propia cara, ¿no? Por eso creo que cuando traigo estos vídeos, ¿no? Pues mucha gente, yo creo que debe de costarle mucho, supongo, ¿no? Entender que el Vaticano está detrás de todo este tráfico de seres humanos, ¿no? Supongo que les cuesta, ¿no? Porque supongo que la ignorancia, ¿no? Como he dicho, ¿no? Está haciendo mucho daño, ¿no? Y no se puede ser así, ¿no? Siempre he dicho, ¿no? Que hay que ser un gran observador, ¿no? Hay que darse cuenta, ¿no? De por qué hemos llegado donde hemos llegado, ¿no? Y creo que eso es fácil, ¿no? Darse cuenta, ¿no? A mí no me lo ha parecido, ¿no? Si hay algo que hay que hacer uno en la vida, en el día a día, no es sentarse y ver cómo pasan las cosas, ¿no? O tiene que obrar, ¿no? Siempre he dicho que las obras son muy importantes, ¿no? Por eso creo que esos vídeos son para despertar conciencia, ¿no? Y para darse cuenta, ¿no? De que si hemos llegado aquí es porque alguien se ha encargado, ¿no? De que el mal acampe, ¿no? En el planeta, ¿no? Como ha hecho, ¿no? A lo largo de todo este tiempo, ¿no? La verdad es que creo que es muy evidente, ¿no? En España creo que es muy evidente también, ¿no? Cómo son las leyes, cómo son las normas, ¿no? Los dirigentes que tenemos, ¿no? Creo que si no te quieres dar cuenta, entonces tienes un gran problema. Eso es algo que es así, ¿no? Por eso todos estos vídeos son para esto mismo, ¿no? Para que la gente se dé cuenta ya de una vez por todas, ¿no? Y creo que en vídeos anteriores ya puse algo, ¿no? Sobre el tema, ¿no? De que incluso los elegidos iban a ser engañados, ¿no? Por Satán, ¿no? Y creo que está pasando algo parecido, ¿no? A mí al menos me lo parece, ¿no? De cómo muchos no hacen un seguimiento a personas que verdaderamente su cara no tiene nada que ver con la realidad, ¿no? Es decir lo de siempre, ¿no? Lo del tema de las mentiras, ¿no? Que cómo no se pueden estar dando cuenta, ¿no? De lo que hay realmente detrás de esa persona, ¿no? Y con estos vídeos lo que intento pues es justamente esto, ¿no? Pues intentar que la gente ya de una vez por todas no abra los ojos, ¿no? Se dé cuenta realmente, ¿no? de quiénes son sus líderes, ¿no? Y a quién adoran esos líderes, porque todo al final tiene una razón de ser, ¿no? Y lo importante es darse cuenta, ¿no? Y en estos últimos tiempos hay que elegir, hay que posicionarse de un lado o de otro. Ya sabéis que lo que puse últimamente, ¿no? Entre el Vaticano y la Cruz Azul. Tan sencillo como eso. Ya sabéis que el Vaticano son adoradores todos de Satán. ¿Habrá alguno bueno? Pues posiblemente, como en todos los lugares, siempre habrá alguno, pero los dirigentes, yo hablo de los dirigentes, de quien controla aquello, tan sencillo como eso. No creo que sea tan difícil entenderlo, ¿no? Por eso yo me refiero de esta manera a eso, ¿no? Porque en los últimos tiempos hay que tomar decisiones muy importantes si te quieres salvar. Y una de ellas es esta precisamente, y creo que es la más importante de todas, porque el resto de cosas a mí no tiene ninguna validez para mí, la verdad, porque lo más importante es salvar el alma. Y si no, ahora no tomas la decisión, ¿no? Pues evidentemente te llevará a la perdición, ¿no? Y más tarde o temprano, yo creo que todo el mundo va a caer por su propio peso, ¿no? Pero bueno, supongo que todo esto todavía tiene que ir a más, ¿no? Ir caldeándose más la situación, ¿no? Y ir viendo, ¿no? La gente, ¿no? ¿Qué es lo que hace, ¿no? Yo la verdad, como siempre, me ha parecido muy fácil entenderlo y todo, y comprender el juego que hay, ¿no? En todo aquí en el planeta, ¿no? Y es uno, ¿no? El que, como digo siempre, en los primeros vídeos se hacía mucha mención al tema de la luz, ¿no? La luz está dentro de vosotros, ¿no? Creo que no es muy difícil, ¿no? Contactar con mi padre o con mi madre, ¿no? Y preguntar cuál es el verdadero, ¿no? Creo que con eso es más que suficiente, ¿no? Para darse cuenta, ¿no? Del engaño que hay aquí. Satán lo único que ha hecho a lo largo del tiempo ha sido eso, engañaros. Y se viste, pues ya estáis viendo, ¿no? Este vídeo creo que habla muy a las claras, ¿no? De cómo se visten, ¿no? Y aquí en España los hay, todos lo sabéis, los hay. Por lo tanto, quería hacerlo cortito para que lo digeráis y lo meditéis, ¿no? Y todos aquellos todavía que tenéis la cabeza un poquito dura, porque sé que los hay, ¿no? Pero bueno, sé que toda la gente que ve estos vídeos son bastante inteligentes, que creo que eso es muy importante, ¿no? Para poder entender y comprender, pues, todo esto, ¿no? Y la inteligencia, la verdad es que en los últimos tiempos, como todos sabéis, pues está un poco de capa caída, ¿no? Pero bueno, todo será, como siempre, ¿no? Pues poco a poco, ¿no? Bueno, hermanos y hermanas, un saludo del Monasterio de la Luz de Nuestra Señora de Fátima. Os amo un montón, ya sabéis, y os echo de menos otro montón. Y pronto estaremos todos juntos en la lucha. ¡Mua!